Welcome to the newest season of the Sisters of the Shire podcast, your gateway into the enchanting world of J.R.R. Tolkien. Let's embark on this literary adventure together to explore and shed light on some of his lesser-known works.
Last season, we learned all about the Silmarillion, and this season, we are diving headfirst into the Unfinished Tales. I'm Ashley, and since I have read this book already, I will be telling the story to my co-host and best friend, Abby, who hasn't read it before.
So whether you are a Tolkien expert or just starting to delve into some of his lesser-known works, our goal on this podcast is to have some fun and engaging discussions. Maybe even help you understand something you didn't know before, or simply just have fun with us, your fellow Tolkien nerds.
Your Tolkien nerds. I like it. Yeah. I like it. Yeah. Now let's dive into the Unfinished Tales.
Let's go!
Yeah. I think that's the first time we've ever done it at the same exact time. So how are you, Abby?
I'm gearing up for, in our house, party season because my two oldest their birthdays are this weekend and we're getting into it. Party.
Party.
I delivered some birthday treats at their school, and I was like in the grocery store last night having to buy them, and I'm like, what have I done to myself? Because I have to buy treats for 50 kids. 50 kids. Because
why?
I have to do it for Luna's class and Fox's class.
Oh, okay.
And Luna's class has 26 kids and Fox's class has 24 kids, but they also have 26 kids, but two of them aren't there. So it would have been over 50. But I'm like, what have I done? Why did I do this to myself?
Why did you have two kids at the same time? No, I'm just kidding. Not the same
almost
time.
the same day. I know.
Yeah.
And then we're planning 2 parties because they are turning big. We consider them big years. So it's like my oldest is turning 10 and the middle is turning 8. So they're like big milestone birthday years. And they don't get a big birthday every year, like a birthday party with friends every year. So This year I was like, you get a birthday party this year. I mean, I wasn't going crazy. I was like, you can invite 4 friends. 4. And so Luna is having a magical mystical birthday, which is anything fantasy, like pixies and fairies and wizards and unicorns and mermaids and all that stuff. Like anything magical that's what's going to be. And all the little girls are going to dress up, which I'm loving. I'm so excited.
So cute.
My friend gave me this crystal bowl for like potion punch, and it's a flower, like a fairy. I'm so excited. I know. And we're gonna make fairy wands with like ribbons and crystals and beads and stuff.
So cute.
And we're gonna go on a scavenger hunt to find the dragon's hoard of gold, which is also exciting. And pin the horn on the unicorn and pin the tail on the mermaid. You know, just fun stuff like that. And
like
then
every little girl's dream.
I know. Literally, her theme has been at least unicorns since she was 3. Right. So, and this is her 8th birthday. So it's been magical at our house. And then my son,
which is so funny. Sorry, which is so funny because like Lizzie's like just the polar opposite. She's had Nightmare Before Christmas birthday parties since she was 2. So like, can they be any more different? But they're also like get along so well. Like
I know they love each other. They have, you know, they're the like puzzle pieces that fit together, right?
Yeah.
And then my son,
what's going on with
thankfully was like, let's just go to the arcade. I'm like, oh, yes, I don't have to clean my house. Perfect. And the universe sided with Fox and Luna's birthdays this year, and their birthdays are a 4-day weekend. So excited! They don't have school on their birthdays. I'm not like,
Lucky.
I don't follow that trend that some moms have that they're like, yes, school. I'm like, yes, we don't have school. Yes. I love not having to take my kids to school in the morning and picking them up, and I can do my own schedule. I love it. Anyway, so we're gearing up for 2 straight days of partying, which I'm very excited for. And I let them have a birthday menu. Like I write Fox's birthday menu and Luna's birthday menu. And I do
Aw.
like breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then the treat, like I say, the thing we put candles in. Like it can be, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a cake. It could be whatever you want. So they get
Yeah.
to fill it out. And they did it on
Aw.
2 separate days. They did not look at each other's things.
Yeah.
They're the same. They chose the same things, which I'm like, I don't know if I want 2 days of this.
Okay, so yeah, I have to know what they chose.
They chose fluffy chocolate chip pancakes for breakfast. They
That is an
chose,
Abby speciality, y'all.
it is
That's my favorite at Abby's house.
a tea party for lunch. Both of them said that. Like Luna wants a like girly, like flowers and hearts and stuff tea party, and then Fox wants a Mad Hatter tea party,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
which I'm
I was
like,
trying like Harry Potter themed tea party. But yeah, no, Mad Hatter makes more sense.
but I'm like, really? I was like, is there anything less stressful that you can choose? Like, I really don't know how I can do a Mad Hatter tea party in 2 days. Like, can you like help me a little bit here? Like, can we choose something? A restaurant? Do you want to go out? We can go out. Like, it doesn't have to be at home. So I'm kind of stressed for that. And then their dinner is hot dog is a sandwich. Don't
So random.
I
So
yeah.
so random.
Yeah, if you're lost, me too. Me too. I'm assuming hot dogs are involved. I don't know if they want buns or bread, like sandwich
Well,
bread.
isn't that the classic argument? Is a hot dog like
A
with the bun
sandwich.
considered a sandwich in itself?
I know. So I'll have to ask them more about that. And then their dessert, they finally switched it because Fox, because I was like, please, I don't want to have to eat the two of the same dessert 2 days in a row.
Very different
Fox,
people. I can eat the same thing like over and over again.
no, I can, but it's just like it's like a full size cake, and then we'd have leftovers, and then another full size whatever. So I was like, that's so much. Luna wants an ice cream cake, which I'm like, okay. And then Fox wanted an ice cream cake, and then he ate lemon meringue pie or key lime pie or something, and he's like, no, I want this. So at least one's gonna be an ice cream cake, and one's gonna be either a lemon meringue pie or a key lime pie. So
Nice.
so excited. Anyway, so I'm
Marie
just trying to
Callender's
mention-
has a key lime pie, like a frozen one that you can buy. Okay.
I know.
If you didn't want to go that would be the route I would go. Like easy, already done, made for me. Yes, please.
I've done that for some years where I've made both of their desserts. If you guys don't understand this now, listeners out there, my daughter's birthday is Sunday and my son's birthday is Monday. They are back to back. Like it's very, and because they're so close to Christmas and they're not twins, we don't do any, like none of their presents are wrapped in Christmas paper. I vowed that I wouldn't do that. And they both get separate things. Like I take down my daughter's birthday decorations after her birthday and put up my son's birthday decorations. Like they don't share. I promised them they wouldn't do, because they're not twins. They're not like, they have separate birthdays. And so they're having separate decor, and I go all out. So last year I made their cakes for them, but this year I'm like, sorry, you're probably going to get something store-bought. Love you. Love you still the same, but not going to put forth that effort. Amazing.
Lizzie has a day off from school, so she is in the background with me today. So if you hear a little whispering, because she's, Mom, I urgently need to whisper something to you right now.
I like to whisper too.
Yeah. Or if you hear, I think she's eating popcorn at the moment. Because
no, you always say if you can hear coloring, which is my favorite.
Oh yeah, you can hear coloring.
What does coloring sound like?
Well, it was okay. So, in case you are just joining the pod, so my daughter Lizzie is 6 years old, and she has a little craft table behind me that when we record, she just kind of does her crafting or plays on her tablet or her Chromebook or whatever. But there was one time on the podcast where she wanted to decorate this. We always get those like little craft kit things from like Target or Walmart or whatever. And it was this like plywood little crate, but it was like small, like a little box.
And it had grass in it before, just paper grass.
And it had paper grass in it before. Lizzie feels like it's important to mention. And she was coloring on it, but she kept like skipping over like the spaces in it. And it was just like squeaking on the plywood. And I'm just like, can you color any louder?
Oh, I can. I can.
And then like every time she like went to change a color or something like that, it was like drop from like the highest pinnacle of like
she just throws it as hard as she could against the window or something. Get that blue out of here. I don't need it.
Sorry. It's not funny. I'm being told.
Sorry, Lizzie. Sorry.
It's not funny.
Okay. So, well, let's get to some serious business. Let's start this.
Okay. So, how much do you remember of last week? We didn't go over a ton last week. It was a bit of a shorter episode, but we're just kind of, wading our way in to the Unfinished Tales. So, what can you tell me about them?
So, all I remember, which is, I would say, enough. I'm proud of myself. That when Tolkien passed away, the Silmarillion wasn't published yet. Like it wasn't out yet. And so Christopher, his son, had been tasked with the monumental mammoth task of putting it together through just like I highly doubt he just wrote it in a book just straight. Like chapter 1, last chapter. It wasn't like that. It was probably just loose leaf papers all over his office. And so when he put the Silmarillion together as like the actual story arc, I feel like the beginning and end of the Silmarillion, there were other versions of the stories inside the Silmarillion that didn't make it into the Silmarillion. Maybe his dad wrote on the page like like could be another way to end this story, or like could be like maybe he had like little side cliff notes like not my favorite, maybe don't put this one in here, like you know what I mean, like don't add this one. But
this one I only wrote after an argument with Edith. I'm good now.
Yeah, like, everyone's cats in this one? Probably not. Don't add this one. So poor Christopher had to go through all of those stories and be like, okay, these are the ones that he actually really liked and I feel are cohesive with the whole story from beginning to end, and that's what he put in the Silmarillion. But I like to call them variants, like from the Loki show, which I love, variant timelines of different, how, like, if you're imagining, if you like the Loki show, imagine this, they explain it on the Loki show, it's like branches. So like there's one timeline stream in the middle, and then there's little tiny branches that go off of like what could have been, right? So like one storyline's going, and then like if they just made one different decision or one different choice, and then it goes
Yeah.
off into a little branch of like what could have been if that affected the outcome and the storyline. And so there's these that's what the unfinished tales are the, I don't want to say retellings of the Silmarillion stories, but it's just variant timeline choices of John Tolkien to say, hey, I had another idea for this, but I didn't love it as much as the one that actually made it into the Silmarillion. But I think it's fun that if you guys could also see what else I was thinking about for
Right.
the story. And so Christopher says in the beginning, hey, if you haven't read The Lord of the Rings, or I don't know why he doesn't mention the Silmarillion, because most of these stories
I
are
know.
for the Silmarillion. So it's like, you have to know the Silmarillion before you read the unfinished tales, because then you'd be like, what? Like,
Right.
I don't get. But also knowing the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit helps as well. But I feel like the
Right.
Silmarillion is like the basis of most of these tales. And he also talks about stuff that wasn't mentioned in the Silmarillion, like maybe they had like a sentence in the Silmarillion, and then we don't get to hear much more about it later, which is a bummer. But then in the unfinished tales, he's like, actually, I wanted to go more into this, but I didn't want the Silmarillion to be 1,000 pages long. So here you go. So there are some topics that I'm really excited about. Like they talked about Erebor and the Palantiri, is that what they say? For multiple Palantirs.
Yes. Palantiri.
The Asari, the wizards. More about Galadriel and Celeborn?
Celeborn, not Celebrimbor.
Yeah, Celeborn.
Yeah.
Which have always been like, I want to know more about that stuff. So that's what this book is for, which I'm excited. And Christopher also says, hey, this doesn't mean to like contradict anything.
Right.
This is like because it was in the Silmarillion and maybe the same stories in the unfinished tales, and they contradict each other, like, oh wait, that's totally different from what it was talking about or it's just like an alternate way of telling the story. They don't cancel each other out. It's just for fun. Okay, he was having fun with his characters and his world and his story, and he just wanted to gift us with more, you know,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
there's more. So
and, one thing I did like that Christopher said, it was like,
grateful.
the thought, be grateful to Christopher, everyone. But like one thing I like that he said was like, the thought of the Silmarillion not being in the universe was just like, no way. Like people need to know. And I feel like that's most of his notes.
Yeah. I also feel like he could have not given us this. So
yeah, like we bring up the idea. If you were put in Christopher's spot, would you have lit the place on fire, or would you have organized it all?
you like open the door to his study and see it's all crazy, and then you just like slowly close it back up, lock it, go outside, find the lake that you live next to, and just like shook, just like throw the key out there. There you go.
Yes.
Goodbye. Anyway, did I do a good job?
You did a great job.
Yay.
That was perfect. And another thing I'll say too is like, if you, and Christopher says this, is like, if you read The Lord of the Rings and you're like, that was a nice tale, I read it from beginning to end, or I watched the movie or whatever, I have no questions about anything, great story, I'm good. This isn't for you. And the Silmarillion really shouldn't be for you either. If you want to know, like, what's a hobbit? What are the race of the hobbits? Where do they come from? Where do they go? What is, like, if you have all of the questions, that is very much me. This story is going to fill in some of those gaps that you were wondering about. So funny enough, I actually listened to this. So I listened to this section, of course, multiple times just to kind of like ingrain it into my brain. But then I also listened to this chapter, this corresponding chapter in the Silmarillion, and I listened to our episode on us covering this chapter in the
You're
Silmarillion.
covering all your bases.
I am. Well, because I wanted to know, like, I wanted it to be fresh in my mind what was in the Silmarillion and then what was here. Like, I wanted to hear the difference. And it is remarkably different. I mean, not the storyline necessarily, but even just, like, the writing style. It just boggled my mind. And what's funny is, you know, I'm listening to us doing the chapter in the Silmarillion, and I'm covering it, and I'm like, why did she do this? It doesn't say. Well, what's funny is in the Unfinished Tales, it does say. So it's like, yeah.
Well, let's get into it. Let's do this. I want to know.
Yeah. So before we get into it, sorry, there's a few more things. So I know, I'm sorry. So I got to pay my dues to Christopher again, okay? You know, he gets all of the dues because he wrote a little introduction for each of these sections, which I find adorable. He's like, I just want to warn you before you go into this one. And he actually says that the section that he is doing the introduction for this one, he says, quote, "My father said more than once that the fall of Gondolin was the first of the tales of the first age to be composed," which I thought was like really interesting. Like, of all of the tales, the fall of Gondolin isn't.
He was most excited to finish that one first.
But that was like the first one he thought of too. Like, in my head, it's not that. I mean, not that it's insignificant. It's not. But like, Baron and Luthien.
It doesn't fit this timeline in your brain. Like, how do you get there first?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I just thought that was, okay. Interesting way to go. But how he wrote it was, quote, "In a letter of 1964, he declared that he wrote it out of my head during sick leave from the army." So here's the proof, Abby. At least this story was a fever dream. We have the proof.
Amazing.
And then he goes on to say, quote, "I first began to write the Silmarillion in army huts, crowded, filled with the noise of gramophones." Which, like, that picture, I mean, I watch a lot of, like, World War II movies, and I know exactly, like, what song is playing on that gramophone. And, like, I can hear it. I can hear the guys, you know, talking about girls and, you know, probably playing cards. And then you just have, like, Tolkien there in, like, the corner. He's like, "Hey, guys, do you think Tuor should end up with Idril or Maeglin? Is it too weird if it's Maeglin because they're, like, cousins? Is that too weird? Do you guys know what I'm talking about?" Okay.
The guys are just, like, playing cards. They're like,
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and in the background, it's like,
Yeah. But, like, it's so contradictory in my brain of, like, that scene versus, like, clean elves and, like, crystal palaces and, like, horns trumpeting and, like, it just,
yeah.
what a different world. But another funny note too is apparently some of his notes were found on the back of a piece of paper that, and on this piece of paper is like a handout that they had given to all of, like, the army officers that was to outline the chain of responsibility in a battalion.
A cheat card.
That's, yeah. But he's like, you know, you can tell he has priorities straight. Like, in this time of, like, a brutal war, he's like, I don't care who I need to report to. What is really important is writing down these 7 different names for this one really cool city that I invented. Like, let's keep it straight here. But what is even more mind-blowing is that the earliest manuscript of this story still exists.
Is it, like, in a museum somewhere or something?
I think I couldn't find where it is. I'm assuming it is. But he literally wrote them in 2 little small exercise books. And I'm assuming exercise books are like composition books like we used in school. Those, like, black and white.
Writing, like practicing your writing books.
Right. So I sent you a link with, and we kind of talked about it a bit before we started recording. Like, Abby, how would you describe that piece of paper?
She showed
There's,
me
like, a screenshot of it.
She showed me what it looked like. And it was like first of all, it's really old, so it's like kind of decrepitly kind of falling apart a little bit. But it's so condensed with words, and the handwriting is so like fancy old English, kind of like a lot of swooping and stuff like that. And it's so thick that you can barely see the like white part of the paper, which is like, how can you decipher what these words are? It like, and also his handwriting is so script-y that like, you're like, is that a R? Is it an I? I don't know. I mean, I was telling her like, they're probably used to it because that's probably how everybody wrote back then, and they could probably read it a little easier. But like, dang, I couldn't pick out any words really when you showed me because it was very dense. The writing was very like, dense.
It's not broken up so very well.
Into it.
I mean, it's like you think of like,
I gotta just write this down.
Like you think of how you would write notes, and like, or if you are reading a book on a page, there's usually like indents and spaces and breaks, and it's like there was nothing. It was like a solid mass of words. And then there was like parts scratched out, and parts that were really faded, and parts that were like rewritten over, and it's just like, what am I reading? Like I think I made out and what's weird is I think I made out the first word I recognized, or the first name I recognized on that page was Legolas Greenleaf. I'm like, what are you doing in Gondolin? Like,
Legolas, what are you doing here?
But like, yeah, it's just, and we can post a picture of it too, on our Instagram, but it just is like, I can't imagine Christopher finding piles of these types of papers.
Like, and where do you start? Where do you know what the start is?
Not a clue. Not a clue. But what's funny, it's even more funny because I'm loving the family dynamic of this, how they're like, you know what, we're going to help dad out. So what does a good wife do when she sees, you know, like all these notes that her husband does? And it's like, oh, this is filthy. No one can read this, sweetheart. Let me just make a copy for you. Like, let me just make it so people can actually understand your writing, sweetie. I'll do that for you. Mm-hmm. So she actually wrote out an actual copy that was legible. And then he ended up editing that one too. Like he ended up like scribbling it out and writing over it again. So like I mentioned in the first episode, one of the main reasons that the Silmarillion didn't get published is that he kept changing it. He's a bit of a perfectionist, which I didn't see coming from Tolkien because he's got a bit of a chaotic brain. But yeah, perfectionism is something that is a key to his life. So he has all these crazy versions of it. And then after the war, Tolkien is working at a college, and he's invited to read a paper for an essay club for his college. And instead of like preparing an essay for the occasion, I'm not sure if they were given like an assignment like, hey, can you write a paper on, you know, the fall of Rome or the blah, blah, blah. Tolkien was like, yeah, I don't really have time to do that. You know what I do have, though? It's already kind of done. I'm going to read my heavily edited, super messy manuscript about the fall of Gondolin. So, but what I love is before he started reading it, he goes, quote, "Therefore, I must read something already written, and in desperation I have fallen back on this tale. It has, of course, never seen the light before. A complete cycle of events in an elfiness of my own imagining has for some time past grown up, rather has been constructed in my mind. Some of the episodes have been scribbled down. This tale is not the best of them." But it is the only one that has so far been revised at all, and that insufficient as that revision has been, I dare read aloud. Can you imagine being in that?
Best. You don't get to see me at my best.
Like, can you imagine being in that audience? Like, Tolkien, we asked you to. This isn't what we asked. We don't want to hear about your stupid elves. Like, we were asked to write about.
You'll hear about my elves. Oh my gosh, this is going to be a deep cut. Some people might get it out there, but there's a person, like, I call him a celebrity. He's a celebrity to me, but he's very niche. But there's like a game show he's on. It's like an indie game show. And this guy's like obsessed with birds. He loves birds. And so the question of the game show was like, name a bird, but they wouldn't let him answer. They let everybody else answer the question, but not him. And he was like, and then like at the end, he's like, please just let me name a bird. And they're like, no one wants to hear about your birds. And he's like, I'll name 100 birds. And he's like, no, we don't want to hear them. And he's like, please let me talk about it. So that's what that reminds me of. They're like, no one wants to hear about your elves. Please let me talk about my elves. I have so many papers. Look at these papers. They're filled with elves.
So I don't know if it was like him trying, and I don't know if he, in my head, he probably just did it from memory, like his own. He just like ad-libbed on the spot. He just like went
Professor
for it.
Tolkien, you don't even have any papers on your on your thing. I don't need them. I don't need any of your help. It's all in here.
So after that incident, he just like maybe that sparked it to happen. He did end up writing a mini version of the story, and that's kind of what we heard in the Silmarillion as a chapter, just like a condensed mini version.
Maybe this was his soft opening. Maybe he's like, I'm going to test it out on a real audience and see if they really like it. And then like people are like, oh, that was awesome. He's like, okay, that's the motivation I needed to like finish it and do more with it.
Yeah. So he finished that version. And then many years after that, possibly after The Lord of the Rings was published, he started working on, quote, an entirely refashioned account. Like, he still wasn't satisfied with it. And this was, quote, deeply changed in style and bearings, yet retaining many of the essentials of the story written in his youth. So, like, a little different, but same characters.
It's in Spanish.
So, and then the other difference is that this version, this remastered version, stops randomly pretty much as soon as Tuor gets to Gondolin. Like, and why did he stop there? Christopher literally says, quote, no clue.
Maybe he's like, I perfected everything else after this, so I can just stop here, and everything else that I've written already is perfect. No notes.
So, in case you're curious, because there are a lot of variations, so the tale that is in the Unfinished Tales was retitled Of Tuor and His Coming to Gondolin, because that's all that happens. In the other versions that are out there, like Of Tuor and the Exiles of Gondolin, or Tuor and the Fall of Gondolin, those are from the Silmarillion or other things, because in the Unfinished Tale version that we're going to talk about, he doesn't get past coming to Gondolin. Does that make sense?
Like, I ran out of gas, everybody. Yeah. I'm done.
I ran out of paper. I ran out of ink.
Yeah.
I had to poop. I don't know.
Yeah. It's like, I'm done. I'm done. As Oakley would say, all done. Bye-bye.
Then Christopher ends with saying, quote, It is thus the remarkable fact that the only account that my father ever wrote of the story of Tuor's sojourn in Gondolin, his union with Idril Celebrimbor, the birth of Arendil, the treachery of Maeglin, the sack of the city, and the escape of the fugitives, a story that was a central element in his imagination of the First Age, was the narrative composed in his youth. Like, that is a big part of this story. And that was just the part that he wrote in like the very, very beginning. So
maybe some writers work that way. They're like, I know I want this pivotal scene. I'm going to start here and then fill in the gaps from beginning to end for both of them.
Right. Okay. So that was just the introduction, y'all. I'm sorry, but I felt like I loved the little like tidbits about like, yeah, he wrote it in the army barracks, and yeah, he wrote it on the back of a battalion like information sheet that he probably wasn't supposed to write on. Like, Oh, Tolkien. So I'm going to give you guys a chance here to pause if you want to do a little comparison like I did between versions. So our episode covering the Silmarillion version of this tale starts with our episode number 42, maybe a tad of 43. But and then if you want to read it from the Silmarillion yourself, it is chapter 23 of Tuor and the Fall of Gondolin. So if you want to go, read those or listen and then come back, that's fine. Okay. Now that you're back, we're going to welcome back. Let's lay a bit of groundwork on where we are because like we talked about in the Unfinished Tales, we are kind of just jumping in these random little sections where the deleted scenes, you're not getting the full beginning and middle. We're just kind of being put into this place. So to set the scene, the Nirnaeth Arnodiad, or the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, just happened. And in case you don't remember which battle that was, don't worry, we got you. That was the battle where Maedhros and his army of allies of elves and men, the Edain, the kind of like the elf friends of them that were like good allies with the men, and Easterlings even, and even some dwarves attacked Morgoth from the east, and then Fingon and his army of Edain and elves attacked from the west. Even Turgon and his army from Gondolin joined in the fight for the first time, and it was nearly a victory. They were so close until some of the Easterlings Maedhros had allied with turned on him mid-battle, and it all went downhill from there. The main takeaway we need to remember from this battle is that there were two important brothers of the Edain, the men. They were of the house of Hador. Remember, those are like the blonde hair, blue-eyed, Viking, Rohan-looking guys. And do you remember their names?
Well, one's Hurin because his son is Turin. I remember that.
Yeah. So we're talking about Tuor today. So what's Tuor's dad's name?
If it's a family thing to do, then it would be Huor.
Yes. So Hurin and Huor. I know. I can't say it without sounding like I'm saying the word horror. I'm sorry, guys. That's just how my mouth works. The other important thing to remember from the Silmarillion, I know, is that earlier in their youth, Hurin and Hor were the only men to have ever been to Gondolin. If you remember, they were like picked up by some eagles.
The eagles just were like dropping you off.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Like those
they like saved them from like they saved them like they were like running away from an orc army or something, and then they like randomly like rescued them and then randomly dropped them off in Gondolin. And then once you enter Gondolin, you are never supposed to leave because like it's really super secret. But they gained so much trust and favor with the king, Turgon, that they were allowed to be eagle dropped out of Gondolin, and then they just went back home and lived their lives and never told anyone about it. So
they were literally airdropped.
Quite literally
airdropped.
So, and then another thing to remember is that during the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, when Turgon and the army of Gondolin were fighting, Hurin and Hor kind of joined with them. They're like, "Hey, what are you doing here? Long time no see!" And,
I always think of it like in is it Infinity War?
Five Armies?
No, Infinity War, when Thor comes and he sees Captain America, he's like, "Hey, how's it going? Long time no see. This is my buddy over here. I just met my friend." Yeah, that's what it reminds me of.
So Hurin and Hor are fighting alongside Turgon and the army of Gondolin, and then when the battle was starting to go downhill, the brothers insisted to Turgon that, you need to take your army and fall back to Gondolin, live to fight another day, we'll cover you. And Hor ends up being shot in the eye with a poisoned arrow and dies.
Oh, jeez. Why?
Yeah.
Why the eyeball?
I know. And Hurin was captured and put in his timeout chair by Morgoth.
The ultimate timeout chair.
The ultimate timeout chair. So
Maybe if I
that's kind
threatened
of
my child with like, "Hey, you could go in this timeout chair," they'd be like, "Okay, I'm not going to do anything bad ever again."
just show him the picture of Hurin. So that's kind of the scene that I'm setting. So the start of this section is during the aftermath, following the men and the elves' terrible defeat during the Battle of Unnumbered Tears. So we're starting off on like a really happy time. Like everything's fine. Like people are fine, you guys.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Great.
Now, Hur, before he left for the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, did get married. Mazel tov.
Mazel
to
tov.
Hur.
Oh my gosh. Did we both just say mazel tov?
His wife was named Rian, Rian. And after Hur left, she just kind of stayed in the land of her husband's people, the House of Hodor. And they mainly were settled in a land called Dorloman, which is in northwest Beleriand. Now, the only problem with that area is the north part, because who lives in the north?
The bad guys. The
bad guys.
All up there.
Yeah. So with the battle hasn't actually ended yet, but
do you think that they're just grumpy because they're cold? Maybe that's why they're bad guys.
Maybe
they're just cold. I'm grumpy when I'm cold. So
yeah, me too. Rian was of the House of Beor, not the House of Hodor, like her husband. Aragorn and Baron's house, kind of the darker, more ruggedly, kind of quieter people. And funny enough, her cousin was Morwen, who married Hurin and was Turin's mother. So her sister-in-law was like her cousin.
Oh, well.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
But Morwen and Rian couldn't have been more different. And you'll understand this a bit more in the Turin section. We're going to, talk about later. But man, we get to see a lot more of Morwen in the Unfinished Tales than we did in the Silmarillion. And you're going to be like, oh my. So just kind of keep both of these women in mind in comparison. But what's unfortunate is in that section, they describe Rian really well. So I'm going to kind of steal from that section and just describe her here. So this is about Rian. Quote, by hard fate was she born.
Hur.
Yes.
Hur.
Okay. Quote, by hard fate was she born into such days, for she was gentle of heart and loved neither hunting nor war. Her love was given to trees and to the flowers of the wild, and she was a singer and maker of songs.
Oh,
she was a gentle soul. She was a gentle soul, you guys. So when the Battle of Unnumbered Tears was lost and Hur didn't come home, Rian, quote, became distraught and wandered forth into the wild alone. So yeah, distraught, I feel like, is a good way of describing it. Like those gentle souls, they don't know what to do and they just kind of freak out. And she would have died out in the wild by herself if she wasn't saved by a group of gray elves or Sindar elves who decided to take her in. Now, if you remember, because we did talk about it a little bit in our Silmarillion coverage of this part, but Hur and Rian were married for a grand total of 2 months before he left for battle. That is all the time that they were given. And
sad.
But in that time, Rian did become pregnant. So while she was living with the Grey Elves, she gave birth to a son. Now, Rian tells the Grey Elves that the baby boy should be called Tuor, because apparently her and Hur discussed baby names before he left, and that's what he wanted to name his child. Maybe he had a talk with Hur and he's like, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be so cute if we named our sons after us, but with like T's instead of H's?
Yeah. Wow. They really thought outside the box for that one.
I know. So she tells the Grey Elves, okay, his name's Tuor, and I would really like for you to foster him because, I know that this baby is meant for great things. He's going to help both the elves and men, but, I really need to go and look for my husband, Hur.
But
I can't.
Wait, is he dead? Did he die? No.
So
no, he got an arrow through the eyeball, right?
Yes, he did. But She didn't know that. But so she's like, I just need to look for my husband. I haven't seen him in so long. Like, he never came home. And she just says, I know exactly this like woman type. Like, she's not weak. She just isn't as strong. She's a gentle soul, guys.
She's not in her right mind with grief right now. And so she's just kind of in a manic mode.
Right. But then one of the great, and this just fills the gray elves with pity for her. They're like, "Aw, that is so sweet that you would give up everything, like your freaking newborn baby, just to find your husband." You know, that's love right there.
But your baby also needs love.
Yeah.
No.
But then one of the gray elves named Anael speaks up, and he was actually the only one of that group of elves that fought in the Battle of Unnumbered Tears and came home. He was the only one that survived. And so he's like, dude, I know what happened to Tuor, and let me tell you, it didn't end well. Quote, "Alas, lady, it is known now that Tuor fell at the side of Hurin, his brother, and he lies, I deem, in the great hill of slain that the orcs have raised upon the field of battle." Like,
so he's like, I saw him die, okay? Like, I seen his body. You don't have to be ditching your kid, okay? There's no reason to do this.
But just to like bring the differences with the Silmarillion right here, like, it's not, this conversation doesn't really happen. I say like the main difference between the Silmarillion version and the Unfinished Tales version right here is that we are hearing a lot more dialogue. Like, I feel like in the Silmarillion, it's just kind of like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then she went here, and then we went there. But in the Unfinished Tales, we're getting more like,
there's more talking.
Alas, lady. And then she's like, I need to seek out my lord, my husband. And you know, so do you want just narrative, or do you want it more thoughts and intentions? So just kind of an interesting little tie. But, you know, he tries to warn her, you know, I'm sorry, ma'am, your husband's dead. And yet the next thing we are told is that Rianne leaves her baby, leaves the Grey Elves, travels across the land of Mithrim, finds the great hill of slain that the orcs made, lays down, and dies.
Oh, yeah.
And
I find
feel
it
like it should be
interesting that
noted.
people, mostly with the women in the Tolkien universe, just have like a switch in their body that can be like, I'm done. I'm going to die now. Like, I'm over it.
Yeah. And I feel like it should be noted right about here that she was only 22 when this happened.
What?
So,
that's too young. She's just a baby.
Yeah. Lucky for Tuor, though, the Grey Elves were a great foster family to him. You know, they taught him the lore and skills that any of the other Edain would have, you know, been taught in the best days of their peace. You know, he grew up and became fair of face. He had blonde or golden hair like the rest of the men of the House of Hodor, and he became strong and tall and valiant. And yes, I will say again, I said this in the Silmarillion version, Tuor is Thor. He is Chris Hemsworth.
Yes.
There is your visual. Now, remember
Chris Hemsworth
that before.
Thor. Okay. Chris Hemsworth Thor.
Yeah. Now, remember that before the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, that the elves and men, you know, they were united. They had large groups of settlements. But after the battle was lost, everyone was just left alive. Everyone who was left alive just kind of scattered. You know, there wasn't a lot of people died. So, like, there wasn't the populations to go back to, but also people were, like, being hunted, too. So they just were, like, scattered.
It was a fun time. It was a fun time to be alive.
Yeah. Plus, on top of that, the Easterlings, who switched to Morgoth's side, were given the lands of Hithlum in northwest Beleriand as a reward. You know, originally they were actually promised the more rich lands of Beleriand further south, but Morgoth was like, I'm going to teach you about double crossing and double cross you. So take that and learn something. So
quadruple cross? What?
Yeah. So the Easterlings were given the land of Hithlum, and Hithlum is also Dorloman. They're right next to each other. So these poor fractured people that still remained in Northwest Beleriand are now just being overrun by Easterlings.
Hmm.
Quote, and though they, the Easterlings, loved Morgoth no longer, they served him still in fear and hated all the elven folk. And they despised the remnant of the house of Hodor, the aged and women and children for the most part, like, but why them? And they oppressed them and wedded their women by force and took their lands and goods and enslaved their children. Orcs came and went about the land as they would, pursuing the lingering elves into the fastnesses of the mountains and taking many captive to the mines of Angband to labor as the thralls of Morgoth.
Dang.
So, kind of a scary time. Not a good time to be in Beleriand. If you had to be in like a time machine, that's like where you don't want to go back to.
So a quick sidebar that
Yes.
Morgoth can turn elves into thralls and orcs and whatever, but he can't do any of that stuff to men. They just kind of get...
I think men can be
They're
turned
easily
into trolls.
corruptible.
Yeah. It wouldn't be as hard to turn
Honestly,
them
I
into
feel like they're
trolls.
just easily corruptible anyway. Like, you don't
Yeah.
have to physically change them very much, I feel.
Yeah, I agree. So, Anael,
You
the
want
leader
indoor
of...
plumbing? He has pamphlets. He's like, how does food every day, a warm house, and indoor plumbing, maybe a wife or two? They're like, you had me. I'll take it.
And look at this wonderful family we have, and it's growing every day.
Yeah, we're a family. We work together in Angband, okay? He has like, it's like a inspirational pamphlet about the like good qualities of joining.
Yes.
You know?
Morgoth for president.
Yeah.
So anyways.
He has like a hard hat on. And he's like, come build Angband with us today.
We'll live together, we'll die together, but we'll do it
Wait, what's that last part?
together.
We're gonna be together forever. You don't ever get to leave. Excuse me, what?
Never. So Anael, the leader of the Grey Elf group that Tuor lived among, took his people and led them into the caves of Androth. And all Androth means is long caves. Like, these were deep caves. It's not just like a little bit of a cave. It's a long cave. And there they would live, quote, a hard and wary life. Now, I never thought about this before. But, like, for me, like, caves, I don't know why it took me so long to figure this out. So, long caves. Well, like, Nargothrond was a cave, was technically a cave. So, like, and that was, like, a palace. So, like, why couldn't, in my head, like, it was literally, like, sleeping on the floor, like
a nasty cave.
Like a nasty
dead,
cave.
Rotting animals that something else ate in there or whatever.
Yeah. So, I mean, this could have been, like, decent, but, I mean, not like Nargothrond. But in my head, a hard and wary life, but maybe not as hard as I had at first imagined.
Maybe the cave from, like, The Grinch. He had a nice cave.
Yes! Let's go there. Okay. So, quote, until Tuor was 16 years of age and was become strong and able to wield arms, the axe and bow of the Grey Elves, and his heart grew hot within him at the tales of the griefs of his people, and he wished to go forth and avenge them on the orcs and Easterlings. I feel like this is every 16-year-old in every book ever. Yeah. I will have my revenge. Yes. But then I also see him as, like, compared with these, like, old, like, battle-hardened, wise elves, like, just this tiny little, and I would give them a ha and a hi-ya, and I would kick up, sir. Like,
and then just pat his head,
just,
like,
yes.
Yeah, they just pat his head, like, okay.
Okay, calm down, killer. Like, no one is kicking or killing anyone. Just calm down.
Yeah. He has a little wooden sword and, like, a little, like, wooden shield.
And, you know, he just kind of emphasizes, Anael's like, okay, just calm down, little sir. You know, remember what your mother said. You know, you have a destiny ahead of you. But, you know, as for the Grey Elves, they know Morgoth isn't going to stop being a meanie pants until, his entire fortress and armies are overthrown. And that's not going to happen anytime soon with things the way they are. So we're just going to give him the north. He can have it. We're going to go to the south and you're going to come with us, right? And Tuor is like, wait, we're all going to go? Wouldn't that be like really obvious? Like we'd be found this large group party, like just walking. I have some security concerns, sir. And I was like, okay, we're not going to be out in the open because there's actually a secret way that we will go. And this secret
tunnels,
yes.
Secret tunnels through the mountains. It's a real song. Don't at me.
Oh, I know. I was just letting you finish. So this secret way is called the Gate of the Noldor, and it was made a long time ago by, you guessed it, the Noldor.
Oh.
And this is before Turgon went to hide in his secret city of Gondolin. And, Anael's telling him all this, and at the name of Turgon, Tuor, he gets the feels. Quote, at that time, Tuor was stirred, though he knew not why. It's like when people mention Aslan and Narnia, they're like, oh. There's even a song about how it makes people feel in the musical, just so you know. Like they never met them, but they just feel something.
That's adorable.
Yeah. So his spidey senses are tingling at the name of his future father-in-law. And he's like, I just need to know this guy. He sounds really cool. And, Anael tells him some more things about Turgon. But mainly that, Turgon fought in the Battle of Unnumbered Tears and he was only able to escape because, your uncle and your father, covered his retreat. And Tuor is like, so if my dad Tuor and Turgon were besties, maybe I should go find this Turgon guy since it sounds like he kind of owes me one. My dad died for him basically. So, and Anael's like, well, you could, but you can't because, I'm sure he's super cool and he probably does owe you one, but small problem. No one knows where Turgon is. So you can't. But if you want to see any other elves out there that might know where he is, or you just come down south with us and we can see about talking to some of those elves. Wouldn't that be convenient for everyone? Everybody wins. I could the parental tactic he used there. I'm like, nice one, Anael. Nice. Quote, thus it came to pass that the elves forsook the caves of Androth and Tuor went with them. So they're leaving their nice comfy cave, their Grinch cave, and they're going to go south.
Yay, good job.
Exactly, Lizzie.
Good.
And that's actually where I'm going to leave you for the day.
Well, I'm excited for more dialogue, honestly. I'm excited for more dialogue in the story between characters instead of one line and it's and this happened. Okay, moving on. And you're like, wait. That could be a whole conversation.
Yeah. And what's funny is and even with Tuor, just by himself, he talks out loud all the time.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, awesome. Something to look forward to.
Well, thanks for teaching me today.
You're welcome. So just be sure to follow us on Instagram at Sisters of the Shire Podcast. Become a patron and join our Patreon at patreon.com/Sisters of the Shire Podcast. Like our dwarf friend of the Shire, Dan. Love you, Dan. And our elf friends of the Shire, Chris, Shane, and Tom. Love you guys. Thank you so much for your support. If you want to join them, that's great. But if you can't, we get it. Just do us a tiny favor and just give us a rating on whatever platform you listen to your podcasts on. We really appreciate it. It goes a long way.
It does.
The only world news we have is that
share
it. Yeah.
Share with your friends. Be like, hey, I'm listening to this really fun podcast and I think you'd like it too. That's easy.
So easy. And the only world news I have is that Greece overtook New Zealand.
What?
I don't know what happened there. Yeah.
Whoa.
Shots fired. Shots fired.
Whoa. Good job, Grease.
So, that is all I have for you today.
Thank you
You're welcome.
for all your hard work.
You're welcome. Lizzie, do you want to say something?
Yes, Lizzie. Well,
What do you think?
Nah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do
I don't know.
you think our listeners should keep listening?
Ish.
You say, until next week.
time.
Oh, next time. Until next time.
Hi,
I've been Ashley.
I've been...
Abby.
I've been.
Abby.
But what's your name?
You're Abby now? Wait a minute. Imposter? Did you steal my identity? Where's my social security card? Oh, no.
Where's your wallet? All right. Until next time, I've been Ashley.
I've been Lizzie.
And I've been Abby, and this has been the Sisters of the Shire podcast, and we're so glad you're here, and we hope you can join us next time. Bye!